Welcome to Laying the Leadership Foundation podcast, where Stephanie and I discuss how we are building a leadership development program and hear from guests on their experiences.
Welcome to Laying the Leadership Foundation podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Jurasik, and
Thomas Poole.
Today we are joined by two guests from Providence College, Jenn Cunningham and Nick Saylor. So to kick us off, Jen, do you want to give us a little background on yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Stephanie and Thomas, for putting this together. I think this is a really cool concept to kind of document our journey together. Jenn Cunningham, I have been at Providence College. This is my 13th year at PC, so have really kind of built a foundation at the college, and grew up, born and raised in Massachusetts, so definitely a fellow New Englander at heart, but went away to college, played D1 field hockey at Ohio University. So really cool experience to kind of get out of the New England area for at least a few years. And then when I graduated from Ohio, I randomly moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin for a year. I met my roommate on Craigslist, which was interesting. And but it worked out fabulously, and we're still friends to this day. And then I spent some time at Marquette University for about a year working in their marketing and ticketing department, promoting some of our games and then also selling tickets. And then I've been at PC from there ever since.
So then, Nick, I know I had the opportunity to chat with you over Zoom the first week of our NCAA Leadership Academy workshop, as you're from Bloomfield, Connecticut, which I'm literally on the Windsor-Bloomfield line. So shout out to the Windsor and Bloomfield area. So I guess tell us a little bit about your time. I know you were having a little bit different of a process and journey to get to Providence College, but tell us a little bit about your background.
Thanks, Thomas. Thanks, Stephanie. It's a pleasure to be here, and I love the shout out to the 860. Always repping Connecticut when I can. But so for me, I grew up in Bloomfield, Connecticut, like you said. Went to Loomis Chaffee right in Windsor for high school, and then fortunately enough, I actually had the opportunity to play soccer at Providence College. And so, my 4 years there were really tremendous. Pretty successful on the field, got to do some cool stuff off the field. And then after I graduated, I had a great opportunity to join Teach for America in Baltimore, Maryland. And so I became a special educator down there for 2 years at Walter P. Carter in Northeast Baltimore. Really enjoyed my time. And then, got a phone call during my second year down there about a potential opportunity to come back to PC as a director of training education for institutional diversity. And it was a long process to get from that phone call to being where I am today in this role, but I'm really happy to be back. Been back since 2019 in this particular role, and get to do some really great DEI work, not only in athletics, but over in our institutional diversity office, and just kind of have an opportunity to come back to the place that gave me so much during my undergrad. So really grateful for the journey, a little bit different, but certainly something unique and a really great opportunity. So always happy to be back.
So it's sort of an interesting thing too. This is our first 4-person podcast. So we're excited to see how this goes. And then at the same time, I think this is the first interview where we've had someone working in student athlete development who's also a former student athlete. Outside Jeff O'Brien, we had on there Amanda Ekaboots. She played community college, but not at the NCAA level. So I think it's interesting to see y'all's perspective and how that changes from our other guest.
Yeah, so now we're all in the law program together, focusing on creating a leadership program, but from the breakout room in law last week, Jen, you mentioned that you weren't just focused on a leadership academy, you were focused on a whole student athlete development program. So if you and Nick kind of want to talk to us a little bit about how you're attacking this huge undertaking and what your experience at law, how that has influenced how you are creating these programs.
Sure, yeah. Law couldn't have come for us at a better time, to be honest, because we were actually getting ready to launch a formal student athlete development kind of model last fall, and then kind of put the brakes on everything when COVID started happening in the spring of last year. And it gave us a chance to kind of take a step back and actually kind of revisit how we were approaching putting together the program. So law has been such a blessing for Nick and I personally to be able to go through this experience, learn kind of the steps it takes to kind of put together a model program, and then bring that back to our colleagues as part of our student athlete development team. So yeah, to your point, we aren't just here for just solely a leadership academy. We are actually, that's just a small piece of the puzzle that we're trying to launch this coming fall is our goal. So and Nick can probably expand a little bit upon the pillars, just to include you in this conversation about the pillars that we've established for our model. But Nick being the DEI kind of liaison, and then just some of my background with SAAC and leadership, it's been a really good combo for both of us to work on this together.
Yeah, to piggyback off what Jenn mentioned, law came at a tremendous time. Again, we were in the process of launching something that fall, and obviously COVID just kind of derailed that, but probably in the best sort of sense. One of the best things to come out of this pandemic for us in student athlete development is that time to really reflect and think deeply about how we're going to launch this. In the past at PC, a lot of our programming has just been disjointed. We've done a lot of different things, right? We've tackled student athlete mental health, we've tackled financial well-being, we've tackled different DEI topics, we've tackled leadership things, but we haven't really created it in a comprehensive, sustainable, streamlined way. And so this program has kind of helped us think, even from an organizational perspective, what are the ways in which we can roll this out so it's really palatable, not only for our coaches, because they're important stakeholders, our student athletes and prospective students. Thinking about this as a big recruiting tool. So as Jenn mentioned, our whole student athlete development team, which is a great, squad of people, represents so many different pillars. So for me, obviously, as the DEI guy, one of the pillars of our student athlete development model is diversity, equity, inclusion. One of them is personal enhancement, career, leadership, community, and academics. And so we're thinking about how can we create a model programming holistically over a set period of time that addresses all of those different pillars in a way that's makes sense for each stage of our student athletes throughout Providence College. So your freshman year, are we going to do as much career stuff? Obviously not. But your junior and senior year, you're going to focus on that. So just kind of really working through those things has been really great to have now this really strong foundational opportunity through law to then kind of take that information that we're learning and apply it to something bigger, because we really feel like that's going to really get the most bang for our buck and really be a dynamic opportunity for our student athletes and just our campus at PC.
I think I'm going to have to pick your brains in like a year's time, because here at AIC, we don't have an organized student athlete development program either. And that's definitely a goal of mine, is to create that. So I'll be coming to you guys to get some tips and see what I should avoid when making it too.
Part 2 of the podcast episode. Huh?
Yeah.
I love it.
Now with that, and with Providence being a Jesuit institution, I guess, how are you guys tying in the university or the college's pillars and the standards and the values with your programs as well?
You want that one, Jenn?
You can start. I'll back off you.
Yeah. Well, I would be get in big trouble if I didn't say that we're a Dominican institution. So a subsect of no worries. Our Dominican friar tradition is strong, and I know a number of different friars would make sure that I knew. But yeah, so one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we did was throughout this creation of this student athlete development model was to continue to think about what are our foundations of our school, just period, right? So of course, being a Dominican institution, thinking about Veritas, thinking about some of the different, Catholic teachings that are at the core of our institution, and then also thinking about what matters within our athletic department, right? A lot of those things are married, but making sure that we continue to build off of those traditions. So we made sure that when we were creating our model, when we're starting to think about what matters for our student athletes, what sort of opportunities do we want them to have, we made sure that we incorporated all of those components, made sure that we, talk to the right people, right? Making sure that we're not doing this in isolation. Athletics can be its own island, and in some ways that's great because you get to do things that at a pace that maybe the rest of the college isn't ready for. Yet at the same time, doing something as broad as this requires you to really tap into our college more broadly, because our student athletes are also students, right? They're not just athletes, right? They don't just live solely in our athletic center and work out and all of that stuff. They're students first, and so anything that we do has to be connected, and that's kind of the way that we've approached it so far. And again, as we continue to flesh it out and continue to move forward, not only will campus ministry be an important stakeholder, but just making sure that that element of our Catholic identity is there.
Just to piggyback off that, as we're kind of building out the whole marketing and the communication on this is really cool. The kind of the graphic associated with these pillars is we have this flame on campus. It's a really, really cool location. It's become kind of a hot spot on campus, but it's a torch. It's not a live flame or anything, but it's a really cool torch that kind of changes colors at night. And that's kind of like the cornerstone of our campus image, and that's kind of what we're going to take as part of like just the visual component of this program, just to kind of tie everything in. But just one thing I want to add too is just the Dominican presence on campus. They live right on campus in the Priory. There's so many of them, and each Dominican is actually assigned to one of our sports teams. So we have like team chaplains, which are really cool. So they come to the games. They're invested. They, pre-COVID, were sitting on the bench and in the locker room, and they're really an extension to the team and the coaches as a support system for the student athletes. So, we're a small campus, and it is very family oriented. So the Dominican presence is really, really big for us.
I know Stephanie was telling me after this past week's law meeting about that, Jen, you brought up something called the Coaches Listening Tour, and how that was very impactful for you guys. I guess, can you talk to us about what that is and help me with a better understanding of that process?
Sure. So, the first couple weeks when we started this program, it became really, imperative, just kind of hearing the materials and going through those first 4 weeks, that we needed to conduct a needs assessment, not only with our student athletes, but also with our coaches. And we took the approach, instead of just sending out a survey, Qualtrics survey, and have our coaches fill it out, we actually wanted to have a conversation about it, because we felt it was very important to have all the coaches' voices heard in this process. And sometimes when you get a blanket survey, sometimes you don't really know what the reasoning behind an answer is, or just being able to analyze the data and actually have those conversations. It really was the first major thing we wanted to accomplish during that break between module 1 and module 2, where we had this kind of opportunity, and it was perfect timing because the kids were on break. Not a lot of our teams were competing at that time. The coaches actually had time to really sit down with us and have these discussions. So what Nick and I did is we invited other members of our student athlete development team to join in on these 1-hour conversations with every single staff. So we just did Zoom virtual meetings. We recorded it. We showed them our new graphic with the flame image that we had designed, and just kind of set the stage for them in terms of what we were looking to do, that we're in the data collection phase right now. We're looking to launch this formal program in the fall, and it's, you know, really important that we have your feedback as we look to kind of build this out. So it was really well received. We had some really good conversations with every coaching staff, and you could tell some of the coaches who were really into this like emerged through these conversations as, you know, people we wanted to identify to kind of maybe join our student athlete development team, or at least help with, you know, the rollout of this, the buy-in, the marketing, the idea generation, or even utilizing some of them as, you know, presenters in some of these sessions. So it was a really, really good process for us. And so what we're doing now is we took all that data, we took notes, we have the recordings of all the Zooms, and now we're actually inputting that into a Qualtrics. So we can actually spit back out the data between what the student athletes are saying and what the coaches are saying, and how maybe there's some differences but similarities between, you know, one of the coaches, one of the team's coaches, and then the student athletes of that team, kind of see what, if they are they saying the same thing, is it different? So it's going to be really fun to analyze that. And then I guess the last kind of step of what we're looking to do is to present this information at a futures coaches meeting to all the head and assistant coaches, senior staff, sport administrators, and just so they can kind of see the results, and then from there we can then roll out kind of our proposed program with those results in mind.
And one thing I wanted to add on to what Jen was saying, I think, you know, she mentioned just the excitement and the energy of the needs assessments. You could really see that buy-in, but it's also interesting too, because we have such a wide range of coaching styles, a wide range of what people define as leadership. Where do they place value as who should be leaders, or what leaders are, or what does it mean to, you know, be developed when it comes to just personal enhancement, what things matter, the elements of community service. So you really got to see so many different ways in which our teams operate, and just the language that everybody's using. Because for us, one thing that we have been thinking about a lot, and, you know, law has done a really great job of giving us a lot of foundational elements of leadership styles, you know, different leadership models, but we wanted to make sure that it was congruent with what our coaches believed, right? Ultimately, our coaches are probably our biggest stakeholder. And so for them to be on board, we wanted to make sure that we were giving them something that they also wanted as well, right? So we wanted to just get that opportunity to learn and to hear what that looks like for them and their different programs, some of the different concerns for particular teams, because we do have a wide range of sports, right? The experiences, men's lacrosse is different than women's basketball. That's different than, you know, women's swimming. So it's a really great opportunity for us to kind of really think big picture about what is it that our student athletes need more broadly, but also specifically for different targeted populations, some of the different components that could be really helpful for us. So really an awesome process. And again, like Jen mentioned, it was at the perfect time for us, just as far as the scheduling goes and all of that. So definitely probably a highlight of this entire process was having that in-depth conversation, because you don't really get that chance with coaches. They're normally just busy on the recruiting trail, practicing, traveling, all sorts of stuff. So it was a really good moment for us to get that in-depth conversation that is a little bit unusual.
Were there any answers from the coaches that surprised you, or did their answers kind of reinforce what you guys were already thinking?
That's a good question. You know, to Nick's point, it was very interesting that, you know, what kind of mattered, what were like, 'cause a lot of the questions were, you know, if you had to pick your top 3 leadership skills you want to see developed in your student athletes when they, you know, by the time they leave PC, what would those 3 be? I mean, most of them you can pretty much guess, but honestly, every coaching staff was a little different. And but that just goes to show that a one size approach to this is not going to fit. Like every team's different, and you kind of have to know that and recognize when you need to kind of tailor a specific program to maybe a specific group of people. So it was really helpful for us to kind of get that feedback. But also to Nick's point, like we're just trying to find emerging themes between each team in terms of what, when you think of a team that has a championship culture, what are those leadership qualities that exist in those teams that you've been a part of that have been really successful? Or it doesn't even have to be when you were at Providence, like even teams you've been a part of growing up or just, you know, prior to PC. So we got a lot of wide range of responses in that area. But then it also told us that, you know, there isn't just a one approach that every team takes in terms of leadership too. So how can we then on the administrative side provide that service to all the student athletes to come up with that kind of holistic program that could hopefully work for most people. So that, I guess, is a good challenge for us to see how we can, you know, get it to a point where we have everybody in the process of being bought into this program. So that's going to be a good challenge for us to dive into.
One thing that was a reemerging theme that I think a lot of the coaches mentioned, and it makes sense when I think about the coaching dynamic, is giving and receiving feedback, right? A lot of the coaches wanted increased levels of support for student athletes on giving and receiving feedback. And I think it's interesting, and I don't know if this is across all institutions or even just at the D1 level or D2, D3, or whatever the case is. But I think that, you know, for a lot of our student athletes coming to Providence College, Big East, D1, like they were rock stars where they were. They were the all-stars. They were the best. They were, you know, the cream of the crop where they are. And now, of course, everybody on the team is now cream of the crop. And so, you know, learning to deal with that feedback, learning to deal with maybe not getting the playing time that you expected or getting that criticism that you didn't have before because you were, you know, the standout player, the standout whatever. It's something that I noticed all throughout those conversations. So definitely something that stood out to me. And I think that was different. That response was different from student athletes. We didn't see that as high up of a theme. So definitely something that was interesting that I will always continue to wrestle with, because I know that's part of that demand of playing at this high level is the ability to receive feedback and to give feedback.
That is really interesting. And Nick, you also said earlier how this kind of listening tour helped you make sure that what you guys thought of for those foundational aspects, like the leadership models, you wanted to make sure that kind of aligned with the coaches, which is an incredible thought. I don't think that ever crossed my mind to make sure that what we thought would be the basis model should kind of reflect back with what our coaches think. So that's I'm taking note of that to as we move forward. But what else can you tell us about your experiences with Module 1 and that foundational part, and how has that helped you move forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, for us, it was a really great opportunity because it allowed us to continue to think critically about where we were and how much it takes to get to that level, right? So I think in some ways, not to say that we were naive going into this year thinking we could launch, you know, a successful development model with all these different pillars. But I think having this opportunity and seeing the ways in which things are structured, whether it's the logic models, whether it's just the principles of inclusive design, it kind of gives you an opportunity to step back and say, okay, are we actually doing these things that we know would be beneficial for our student athletes, you know, long term? So I think it kind of gave us the opportunity to step back and dig in a little bit deeper, right? And to really sort of push ourselves in that space. And I don't think we would have had that opportunity to do that if it wasn't for COVID, if it wasn't for the Leadership Academy workshop. I think there was a lot of different factors that kind of just came in that allowed us to really step back and dig in. And it also pushed us, myself and Jenn, to really make sure that we're internalizing this work, because it's not just us that is creating this work, right? So, we're not just solely creating a leadership academy. We're not solely just focused on DEI or our SAAC group. We're thinking about all of our student athletes, and that takes everybody, right? And so for us, we had to really dive deep so that we can go back and teach it, right? So how can we really get all the information from Corey, from everybody, from you all, throughout the process, internalize that, and then give that back to our student athlete development team and say, hey, this is what we've learned. How can we apply it to what we're doing here at PC? And I think that process definitely was something that we had to engage in, and definitely grateful for. Required a lot of work, still is a lot of work, got a long way to go, but I'm really confident that the work that we were able to do because of law will help us down the line and really create a better product ultimately.
Yeah, the logic model has been that's been a fun one, because I actually, when Sunny came in to present to our law group, I think that was module 1, I had heard her do the logic model presentation about a year earlier than that. And at the time I was by myself at this conference, I heard Sunny do the logic model. I was like, what is this logic model? Like, it seems to just be like a lot of work. And at the time I didn't really do anything with it, but having gone through it again for the second time with a new kind of lens looking at it, Nick and I took that opportunity right away, and kind of to Nick's point, retaught that to our student athlete development team. So we did a little mini presentation with them two weeks ago on what a logic model is, 3 weeks ago or so, and then we actually asked them to come back in about 2 weeks to our next meeting and have them present their logic model for their pillar of that flame graphic. So it was really fun. We did that last Thursday. Everyone came with their logic models, and it was really good to see kind of what everyone was thinking, right? And how the pieces of the puzzle are going to now fit together for us to then take all the logic models, the learning outcomes, and then really dive into that kind of activity curriculum component of what we're trying to create. So it was good.
And to add on to, one thing that Jen said is that, again, shout outs to our student athlete development team, because we have so much, a big wealth of knowledge, and, we have all these programs and things in mind and things that we've done in the past, but almost organizing them, putting them on paper, seeing what everybody's doing was really helpful, and something that we often don't do. Normally when we have our meetings, we just kind of update each other like, hey, this is what's going on over here. This is what's going on over here. But to have these working meetings where we're now creating the opportunity for us to all see, this is what DEI looks like in the athletic department. These are the things we're hoping to cover. This is what, community service looks like. That, and just having that ability, I think, was really invigorating and energizing to see the depth and the complexity and the expertise that everybody brings, but also from an organizational perspective, really helpful to take it from up here in your brain to on paper, so that we can better create this program moving forward.
Yeah, so in between modules, we went through the iSync challenge. I know that's something that Stephanie and I definitely enjoyed doing, just because it made us ask a lot more questions and go more in depth and go from there. So I was wondering if if you guys were able to pull anything out of that challenge and put it into your logic model, or what you're trying to do at Providence.
And I'll start real quick because so as you know, right, every institution or every group
Are you gonna ask them?
Yeah. Okay. So how did
Okay, so the same group.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so you guys had the same institution, right?
Yeah, case 4.
Okay, so what was it? It was, what was the name of the university?
Providence Tech.
Tech.
Unbelievable. So we thought it was Providence Tech, right? We didn't think the L was an I, which clearly would have made more sense. It fit along with everything else. We're literally about to present and we're like, yeah, at Providence Tech, this is what we believe. And everybody's laughing. And I'm like, just assuming that everybody else had that So that was kind of awkward, but no, it was a really great, it was a really great opportunity for us because I think it allowed you to step out of yourself. You know, sometimes it's easier to think about what you need when it's not your product that you're analyzing. So I was really happy that we were able to do that and think about the different, like the needs assessment or the foundation for that particular institution and see how that matches with us and just kind of doing that same process in an expedited way, but it not being us, right? We tend to like, find it difficult to analyze and criticize ourselves when it comes to this work. And so it was really great for us to do that. And I definitely enjoyed it. And I enjoyed watching the others. To be honest, I think that was one of those things. Sometimes when you have multiple presentations, pretty much the same thing, it can get boring. But I felt like this particular one was really exciting to see all the other ones and just kind of see where people were going and learn and taking notes and, scribbling down things on my sticky notes as we're going. So definitely a good one for us. For sure at Providence Tech.
That's gonna live on, honestly. Really funny. But that process was a good test run, and it was also a good kind of confidence boost for just us personally to know that, okay, we were confident enough to know that these are the steps we wanted to take with our fake university, but also a lot of the stuff we were already doing. So it was kind of an easy kind of thing for us to say, okay, well, we already did this in real life, so we're going to kind of incorporate what we're doing here at Prove It Tech. So
I think it's just going to be known as Provelt Tech from now on. That's what I'm calling it.
We'll have to get shirts made and everything.
Absolutely. Corey was the one that was like, Prove It Tech. And Nick and I were like, we were messaging in the private Zoom chat. We're like, what? Did she say prove it? I was like, that is not what we called this.
And we were so confident. And it's so funny too. Jen was like, we were private messaging before we started. She was like, make sure you bring the energy. Like, we're going to make sure we knock it out the park. So I'm really getting like in the mood and in the moment. And of course, I'm like starting out hot and not even saying the institution, right? So just a mess, but overall really fun.
Well, I mean, I think we were both excited for the presentation, but that was before Kayla Lee and I can't remember his name.
Ryan.
From Bethune-Cookman. They came in with their own music and pom-poms and cheering, and we were like,
they did the whole HBCU thing with like, oh my God. And we were going on after them. We're just like,
I love that.
Like, well, there goes HLK for the energy, but
oh man, that's funny. Good stuff, Ryan.
But as we start to wrap up a little bit, we have two more topics that we want to ask you about. The first one is, I guess in the first 2 weeks of the module that we've had in module 2, I guess, what have been your thoughts? The first week was obviously the I Think Challenge and us presenting. And this past week was our core values, mission statement, those type of things. I guess give us a little bit about your thoughts on the module 2 first couple of weeks.
I mean, the core value, we just had a call with Corey, I think last week, but the core value, that last presentation this past Thursday was awesome. Really, really loved that. And of course I was private messaging Nick because that's what we do during these law Zooms, but like just so many good topics and activities that we can then that's what I'm most excited about. It's like, okay, what are we going to offer our student athletes and just kind of being able to experience those ourselves and kind of see how we can then tailor it to the student athletes at PC is really cool. I love the application process of this and where this next 2 weeks here is going to go. So I loved the whole shadow value topic. I thought that was really, really interesting. And just that whole activity in and of itself was really great.
To piggyback off Jen, I mean, the whole implementation component of this is something that's really exciting. When we had a call with Corey, I don't think she'll mind me mentioning it. One thing that I had brought up was, for me as a former educator, at the K through 8 level, it was really cool to see like as presenters for them, this idea that they had, the execution of it, the effectiveness of it, just to kind of see it all in action and just thinking like how great it went for us and imagining what we can do with that for our student athletes. So just to be able to see that on that end, just from a design perspective, was really great, just to see the way that they engaged all of us as adult learners on something as heavy as, you know, what are our core values, and thinking about how impactful that can be for our student athletes who are at this really malleable part in their lives. And just thinking about how profound that can be was just really, really cool. I certainly enjoyed it. And again, like Jen mentioned, like we're chatting back and forth. I was like, all right, well, I found this, we should do this. What can we do? So definitely a really cool opportunity, and just really stoked for just where we're continuing to go on this end. Cause I think this is not to say that, you know, other parts weren't fun, but I think this is like a really exciting, fun, engaging component of the work. And I think we're going to get to see a lot of different folk in law kind of shine in this process, right? You know, a lot of us are, you know, student athlete development practitioners, right, in some capacity. So these types of activities, these sort of exercises, these conversations is where, you know, people really shine through. And I think this is going to be really great to have that opportunity to be virtually in the same room with so many different dynamic folk from all over the NCAA. So really looking forward to it.
Completely agree. This implementation and activities, this is my jam. Like throughout this whole process, I've just been sending Tom random like activities like, oh, this would be really good. Maybe we can fit this in. So I'm really excited to hear other activities and programs that other law participants are going to come up with. So our wrap-up question that we've started to ask all of our guests is, while you are starting to think about this implementation process and starting to really build up your leadership development academy and just your student athlete development programming in general, what is an obstacle that you guys are excited to overcome?
Yeah, you know, I don't know if it's one obstacle in particular, but I've been thinking about this question since you kind of gave us a heads up you were going to ask it. So I appreciate that. But, you know, being a former D1 student athlete, I love a challenge. So challenges don't, you know, I don't shy away from them, but, you know, just finding kind of that right middle balance, right, with whatever we're gonna present out there and say this is kind of the program. Obviously things will be changed throughout the years and we'll have to be, you know, flexible and adapt as needed, but just like finding that one kind of track or one or two tracks that all our coaches and student athletes are genuinely like, all right, like we're in for this. Like we can recruit the heck out of this. We can talk about this. We can, you know, I just want everyone to be able to have a good experience in this. And like, what is it that, you know, it may not be a one size fits all, but I'm hoping we can at least put something out there that is that kind of happy medium for everybody. So everyone gets a little excitement out of it. So that's kind of the one challenge I'm looking forward to putting out there.
And I guess for me, I mean, similarly, I think that's a huge component. One thing that I have been thinking about, since you also, you know, gave both of us the heads up about the question, something that I've been thinking about a lot is I don't want to say the buy-in, because I believe that we'll get the buy-in, but I think more just the consistency and the solidified element of it, where it really rings true, right? Like we really want this to be a staple. We really want to hit this out the park, because really you only get one first impression, right? When it comes to this, when we're rolling this out, you know, we're doing all this work, we're diving deep into this, and we really want to make sure we knock it out the park right away. So like what Jen was saying, that it really is something that really goes over well, is something that people can really buy into. And so I think for us, or at least for me, I would say just making sure that that first impression, that first year goes well. And so that obviously there'll be kinks, but it's something that people are excited about, right? I'm looking forward to this element of this programming. This isn't going to be something that's a waste. This isn't, I think that's kind of what we're really looking forward to, because in the past, we've had these mandatory programs, right? And of course, we can always, go that route, make different things mandatory, but we really want to get that excitement and that buy-in and look to have this be something that people are really looking forward to having. So I guess that would be an obstacle, I would say.
But one more, not to add two, but to piggyback off that, because Nick and I are now on the same wavelength here, making sure our student athletes understand why they're being asked or, encouraged to participate in these sessions, like understanding the flame graphic, what it means as part of their personal kind of journey, aside from their sport, and just helping to develop them as individuals, and hoping that they can take advantage of that for themselves as they leave PC. So and again, I've said this before, because I'm an external person. I'm on the fundraising side too, and it's like, these kids are our future donors to the school. So if we can make sure that they leave PC and have a good experience, and that helps us down the line when we hope that they'll give back to the college. So I just had to throw that in there because that was two. But
And to Jen's last point, I know this is something that I think about too, is our student athletes are our future donors, but also our student athletes could be our future employees, right? So again, when, like me, my experience at PC was something that was transformative enough where I wanted the ability to come back, and had an opportunity to come back doing some cool stuff. So I think continuing to make the experience meaningful, impactful, I think benefits the college, benefits the students right then, but also benefits us moving down the line. And, from Jenn, from an external perspective, clearly that's a huge thing. I think even just from a personnel, creating this pipeline, we love to hire alums at PC. So what is it that we can have about our experience that makes people want to come back? And hopefully this can be a component of it.
You want to piggyback off that, Jenn?
I'm done piggybacking. Yes, we're good.
Awesome. Well, we thank you so much we want to thank you guys for joining us today. Very insightful. I know lots of things that Stephanie and I are going to talk about once you guys get off here too. So we just want to say thank you, and we look forward to seeing what you guys do over the next couple of modules, and then following along through your journey as well.
Thank you both so much. We're learning so much from both of you too, and we're just lucky to be able to kind of start building connections with different colleges and folk across the country to, all of us are in this together. So we're here for everybody, and we know you all are here for us too. So it's been awesome getting to know you both.
Thanks for having us. This has been awesome. We appreciate it.
Awesome. So for those listening at home, be sure to join us next week as we have Ben Wilson and George Midget of Kansas on. It's an exciting interview that I know we're ready for. But once again, thank you, Jenn, and thank you, Nick. And for Stephanie and I, we'll see you next week.
Thanks for joining us this week on Laying the Leadership Foundation podcast. Be sure to subscribe and review this podcast wherever you listen. If you found value in this podcast, do us a favor and share this episode with someone else. As always, keep laying the foundation.